So you're saying no to people that you do want, right? So how do you become the couple people that it's hard to let go of? It's the people that you connected with, people that you're like,
Yeah.
I had a really great time with them. I'd love to see them every day at work. I can see them getting along with the people at work. I can see them being really warm and kind with our patients. Like, we need this person. It would be such a shame if another unit got them, so to be kind of that person, you've got to not be so nervous that it stops you from connecting with your interviewer, who at the end of the day is just another human,
Nursing school is a wild ride, but that doesn't mean you have to run and hide. When the going gets tough, don't leave your stress undiagnosed. You gotta call the nursing student coach. Real life tips from a registered nurse. In school and out, she's seen the worst. Now without further ado, yeah, here is your host. It's the Nursing Student Coach.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Nursing Student Coach. My name is Nurse Lauren, and I am your host. I want to thank you so much for your support in the show. And as you know, it is my personal mission to help put more great nurses into the world. That's why I started this podcast. And I so appreciate all the ratings and reviews and positive comments and feedback. If you take the, 60 seconds or less to pull out your phone and give us a quick rating on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube, if you can subscribe and make a comment, it really helps to put the show in front of people who may not have found it otherwise. So I really want to reach as many future nurses as possible. So thank you so much again in your help in doing that. Here's the thing, guys. Nursing school ends, and before you know it, you will be sending out cover letters and resumes, and you will get your first interview for your first nursing job. And how are you going to prepare? Well, I came across an amazing resource, a YouTube channel called the New Grad Nursing Interview Coach when I was preparing for my own interviews. And I watched every single video that she had, and she really helped me to prepare for my interviews. And she really breaks down every single question that they may ask you, tells you how to answer it, the do's and don'ts of nursing interviews. And she's here today to talk to you. Her name is Mary. She is a registered nurse, and she works one-on-one with nursing students to help them prepare for their interviews. Her website is newgradnursinginterviewcoach.com. She can work with you one-on-one, or you can watch the many YouTube videos that she has with her tips and mock interviews with other students. So she's here today. We're going to have a great conversation about how to prepare for those interviews for all of you who are graduating soon. And even if you're not, if your interview is far off in the future, this episode is still for you because she tells you how you can be preparing while you are still in clinical and why that is the best thing you can possibly do. So thank you for joining us, Mary, and I would like to welcome her to the show. So, Mary, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is really exciting.
Yes, I'm so excited to share this with nursing students. As I told you before we went on the air, I found your YouTube channel. I was so grateful that I came across you because I listened to, I think, almost every video, if not every video that you made, and it helped me so much. And I got a emergency room residency for new grads, which is going great. So I thank you so much for all of your tips and advice. It was so helpful.
Well, thanks for saying that. I want to also thank all the new grads that have been willing to share their answers with strangers on the internet. It always amazes me that people are willing to do that, and it helps other new grads that are in their, past position. So I'm always really appreciative to them too.
Yes, absolutely. And for those of you who haven't seen Mary's channel, it is called the New Grad Nursing Interview Coach. And she does mock interviews with new grads, and you can learn so much from it. And she'll stop them and interject and say what she thinks. And it's just really great. So, Mary, I wanted to ask you, how did you get into coaching new grads for interviews?
Yeah, I don't actually think I've ever talked about this. It's kind of a funny story. I think because my website says that I'm a new grad interviewer at a hospital, people think that's how it started. But I was actually doing this for free, just for fun with my friends. For whatever reason, interviewing was something that came really naturally to me. And I didn't really understand why my friends in my cohort were struggling so much with it. I was just like, well, you just think about why they're answering the question, what is probably in their rubric, and you tell them a time that you did that thing. And they were like, how did you think of that? I'm like, I don't know. It just makes sense. So I was in nursing school. I would do these, hour, 2 hour long like sessions with my friends to coach them, to help them get their first jobs. And then I was talking to my dad growing up. He's always been really into the like self-help books and the sort of business psychology stuff. And he'll ask me sometimes, who do you want to be a hero for? I'm like, Dad, what does that mean? He's like, well, who are the people that you think are just the best people and you want to help them? And I think new grads and nursing students are just the best people on the planet. They're so just like talking to them and seeing how excited they are to help people just kind of renews why I went into nursing. And it's really therapeutic for me to like see how great they are and kind of be reminded of that. I know this is kind of crazy, but maybe this could be a thing that I do now. Like maybe I can start in like helping people prep for interviews. And so I started doing it. And now it's just kind of people are like, how'd you get this job? I'm like, I don't know. I just started doing it. And it's a thing that I really like doing now. And I think what really helps
saw that it was something you were good at and you could help other people doing it. And it just kind of flowed from there. And I love that story. And I couldn't agree with you more about nursing students and new grads. I think I want to help them as much as I can too with what I'm doing. So I think that's fabulous. And your dad sounds like an awesome guy. So for all the new grads out there that are preparing for their interviews, they might be graduating soon. What advice do you have as far as how to prepare for their first nursing interview?
It's hard. I feel like a lot of new grads get in this situation where they think about interviews and they think, well, let me just get through Thursday's test. Let me just get through the NCLEX. And then all of a sudden they heard back from this hospital that they're really excited about. And the interview is in 2 days. And they're like, oh my gosh, maybe I should look into this to see if
what do I
can
do?
somehow prepare. And then, if we have time to squeeze in a time to work together, we do that. And then what I often hear from them is, I know I have an answer to that question. I feel like something like that did happen, but now I don't remember the details of it, right? Because they'll say things like, their vitals weren't good. And I'm like, do you have kind of like ballpark numbers? And they're like, I wish I would have written it down because now I don't know, right? And especially when you're nervous in an interview to try to recall those numbers in a way that sounds put together. So I think the best way is to write, like journal during, after clinicals while you're waiting for pre-conference, post-conference to start. The other thing too is just watching, maybe just, one day, every couple weeks instead of watching, what you usually watch, on your downtime. If you just watch an interview in a low pressure situation. So your brain kind of gets primed of, oh, these are the stories that I'm going to need. This is kind of the info that my brain needs to look for and grab onto and write down. And it would kind of take the pressure out of trying to come up with everything at once.
Right. Doing it in advance makes such a difference. I agree. And I love your idea about the journal. I think that is such a good idea to do it as you go, to reflect as you're going, because you'll have better stories that way. But what I did and what I suggest doing is to get a notebook or a folder at some point early in your final semester and just start writing out memories of stories that you have. know what the most common questions are and just start building your toolbox of stories, because you can use multiple stories for the same question. At least I think
Exactly.
so.
Yeah, 100%. If you have 10 good stories, that's about all you need. And then
Yeah.
there's also a skill that you develop of being flexible, of knowing how to pair. Like, let's say you have that critical story about your patient that was decompensating. You could use that story for, tell me about a time when you had great communication,
Yes.
talking about all the people that you communicated with to get that person help, or a time you had great teamwork, a time you collaborated. Like, it doesn't have to be the tell me about your most critical patient story.
Right.
So like you said, if you have, these 10 or so stories that you feel really great about talking to a hiring manager about, you're already in a really good place.
Yeah. So you've sat in on a number of interviews with new grads. What would you say makes a new grad, or really anybody interviewing, stand out in both a good way or a bad way? You remember them because they said something really great, or they said something that wasn't so great?
If I'm just kind of thinking about all of the new grads that I've worked with, it's really hard to put this into words, but sometimes new grads have this, they bring this energy to their session or their interview where they really want this job, and they kind of have this energy of like, this is my dream job, I need this job. And it can go a couple different ways. They can come across as just really frantic and nervous, or they can come across as sounding very rehearsed because they are so prepared because they want this job
Mhm.
so badly. And then when you're talking to someone and you can tell that nothing that they're saying is something that they made up in the moment, that this is all sort of like they're standing behind this wall of rehearsed things and they're not going to let you in or let you genuinely
Yeah.
connect with them. It kind of feels like the person isn't willing to connect with you, that they're keeping you at a distance. So what you want to do is, be prepared enough that you feel comfortable enough to engage with, because, if you can imagine, you're listening to candidate after candidate all day long, and you have that one person where you really enjoyed that hour with them because you felt like they talked to you like you're just two humans having a conversation, and they connected with you, and they smiled a couple times each answer, and you felt like you got a chance to really get to know them. It's harder. So let's say you have an interview and almost everyone is a yes. Like, let's say you got approval for 3 spots. You have to then fight to get those 3 people that maybe another unit also wants, right?
Right.
So you have to weed it down to just the amount of people that you have approval for to hire. So you're saying no to people that you do want, right? So
Mhm.
how do you become the couple people that it's hard to let go of? It's the people that you connected with, people that you're like,
Yeah.
I had a really great time with them. I'd love to see them every day at work. I can see them getting along with the people at work. I can see them being really warm and kind with our patients. Like, we need this person. It would be such a shame if another unit got them. So to be kind of
Yeah.
that person, you've got to not be so nervous that it stops you from connecting with your interviewer, who at the end of the day is just another human, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's intimidating, it can be, but they are just a person that you will be working with. Would you say that you have a number one do and a number one don't when it comes to nursing interviews?
A number one do, there's kind of a don't side to it too, right? So
Yeah.
if you bring to the table experience like being a nursing assistant or something, maybe you were an EMT or something like that that got you a lot of really great stories.
Mhm.
If most of your stories are you acting in that role, the interviewer might think, oh, they don't think of themselves as a nurse yet. They're not really like identified with that role, right? So I've talked to new grads who have gotten feedback that, all your stories were about being a nursing assistant. And while the stories were great, you did your preceptorship here on our unit. Why didn't you talk more about that? Um,
Wow, yeah.
so I would say not to have more than 2 stories in your interview about that role, and trying to have most of your stories about things that you did with like direct patient care in the nursing role. For example, like a story about conflict. Don't talk about how you had a group project and it was the struggle in clarifying roles, right? Talk about a discussion that you had to have to protect a patient in a clinical setting, right? And if it was when you were a nursing assistant, you don't have to necessarily say that if it's not pertinent to the story. You could say, at this certain hospital or in this type of unit. You don't have to say when I was a nursing assistant, right? Because in some situations, it doesn't matter. You would have done the same thing as a nurse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I never would have thought of that, but that's really good advice. Yeah. Because you want to see yourself in the role of the nurse.
Another thing, I guess, as a don't that is really easy to do is, let's say you're talking about either a conflict with someone or a family member or a patient that was being difficult. As a human, it's really natural to sort of impersonate their voice, right?
Oh, no.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, if you're talking about a family member that was upset, like I was in the emergency room and there was a dad and a son that, the dad was really upset because they had been waiting so long. And he was like, what are you guys doing? Like, I've been waiting so long. Like, the words enough are, you don't have to do any kind of like head movement or voice change.
Right.
And it's so easy to do to kind of like pull people into your story, but it comes across as very clear that you don't like that person, right? So, and also like using words like needy, demanding, frequent flyer, there's better words that you can use instead.
Choose
that
your
when you
words
say those words,
carefully.
you're like, whoa, I don't
Yes.
even like that
Like
person.
you can quote them, but do it in your own voice.
Yes.
I think the negative patient experience, the conflict question is tough because you don't want to look super negative like you're complaining. So you have to choose your story carefully and choose how you word it really carefully. Put a positive spin on it. Would you say in your experience that most interviews start off with the question, "Tell me about yourself"?
Yes, and everyone would say.
Yeah. And how would you go? What's your advice for answering that question? I guess as a part B, do most of the interviews that you sit in on at start that way? And if so, how do you suggest answering that question?
The framework that I've found is kind of helpful to think about is almost as if instead of tell me about yourself, it's sort of like, why are you here today? Like, what are you looking for? How did you get into this? Kind of like, tell me about the story of you in nursing,
Right.
So most people follow a kind of a formula of, name, where they went to school, when they graduated. I think it can be really helpful in building that rapport and being more of like a person with a story than just a candidate in a time slot, to talk about like what initially got you into nursing, right? Was it you were taking care of your aunt or your grandma, or I don't know, maybe you had an illness, or I don't know, everyone brings their own really interesting story. There's so many different examples. Immediately within the first 30 seconds, you're a person with a story, so it kind
Yes.
of helps build that like person to person connection. So talking about how you initially, even because, if you want to help people, you could have been a social worker, right? If you really love medicine, you could have been a doctor. Like, why nursing of all things? Like, what gave you that idea? And then what were kind of the jobs or the volunteer experiences that solidified for you, and why? Like, yes, nursing is what I want to go into, right? And then the next part is kind of gearing up towards that, like you tailor it to that specific job. How in school you realized you loved whatever it is, whether it's peds or ICU, like what rotation was the most similar, and talk about why you thrived in that environment. Was it that you loved, the critical thinking aspect and like being challenged and working in a fast-paced environment, or you really enjoyed working with children, and like talk about how great that experience was, to kind of make them see like, oh, this unit would be really good for this nurse. That's great. This would be a good fit. And they can kind of like visually picture that. And then the last part of the formula is sort of why this hospital, right? Like if you Google like the hospital name and then nursing careers, you can kind of skim and get some ideas of what do they pride themselves on, and maybe pick one or two words that you're like, I really respect that, and talk about it. Some people wrap it up by, some sort of gratitude piece of how grateful they are to be here today talking to, or, thank you for giving me the chance to speak with you. I'm so excited to get to know more about you, whatever.
Yeah, I love that's
kind
a
of gives
really
you
good
the
formula. And it's specific. That's what's good,
Yeah.
because I think some people can go off on a tangent just rambling. And so I think if you hit boom, boom, boom. I actually led with the gratitude thing because I saw so many interviews where people are just like, my name is this and I graduated from here. And so I just wanted to come right out and just say, well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to meet you. And I had done my research like crazy, but I didn't rattle off the mission statement. I worked in some of the core values that they had with my core values.
And like having like if that flow comes more naturally to you, it's good that it's a little bit different than like you don't want everyone following the same formula. And then knowing a little bit about the hospital, it doesn't just sound like you're just going wherever reach out to you. Like this is something that you know what it's going to be, and it's something that you know you're going to like, rather than I'm just going to go wherever emails me back. I just want a job,
Yeah, for sure. So I know that this is on your YouTube channel, but what are some of the most common questions that people should have in their tool belt? Like, what are, like, without a doubt, you will very likely be asked boom, boom, boom. What are some of those common questions in your experience?
In my videos, I like to kind of go in that order because I know most people won't make it through the whole video. So I want them to get like at least the most likely questions. So most likely, obviously, is the tell me about yourself. A lot of hospitals ask about, they want sort of that sweet story of, a special moment you had with a patient. And that could look like, tell me about a time you went above and beyond, or tell me about a time you provided compassionate care. Another super common theme is like related to mistakes and feedback. So they could ask, a time that you made a mistake, and how, in the kind of the points from that are usually about like how you made change, how you took accountability, made changes going forward. It's not enough to just like list a story about a mistake. It's like that kind of after piece that's the critical part. And then the feedback story is they want to know that they're hiring someone who is open to feedback, who really wants to learn from their preceptor and their peers. And then conflict is sort of another genre of questions, right? So it could be a question about conflict with a coworker, with a supervisor, with a doctor. So have, a conflict story. And if it's not exactly the kind of, like, let's say yours was about a coworker and they want one about a doctor, you can say like, is it okay if I, tell this other sort of version of the, most of the time. That's and then other common ones, the sort of culturally conversant care, like diversity type of story is often asked about. And it's not enough to just say, I used a translator once. Like they want to learn how you like helped bring what's important to that person, because you listen to what's important to them to their bedside care. And how much you enjoy doing that. And then
I know a lot of people who got that question.
Yeah.
The culturally competent. People are asking that.
There's always
difficult patient. Tell me about a difficult patient. A lot of people got.
Patient. Oh my gosh. Yes. Like almost every interview. And then there's also like, let's say you're going for a pediatrics type of interview. They'll likely ask, tell me about a time you had a difficult family member, or a time you provide family-centered care, which is sort of the family version of the like above and beyond.
Right.
Other super common questions. There's always the, strengths and weaknesses. Why should we choose you? Where do you see yourself in 1 in 5 years? And then oftentimes at the end, I'll say, what questions do you have for us? So have a couple of questions prepared that way. But, if you have good stories for and also, have a story about a critical patient, because if you don't do that and someone else does, it kind of seems like they can be trusted in an emergency, whereas they don't know if they can trust you in an emergency because you've never told a story about a time when you handled an emergency well. You know what I mean?
Right. What would you say to somebody who's minutes away from walking into an interview and they are just super nervous? What would you say to that person?
I don't know where I got this tip. It's the tip that for some reason was like the one tip I needed when I was going into my interview. I wish I've Googled to try to figure out where I got this from, because I had done like an extensive search of possible questions and tips. It was to try to project openness and warmth, because for some reason I can't be nervous and also project warmth at the same time. It's like one cancels out the other. So if I just focused on being warm, the nerves took a backseat for the moment.
That's great. I've never heard it put that way before. That's really good. Do you see any common themes or like mistakes that are just so preventable? Just kind of like bonehead mistakes kind of thing?
When they sound too rehearsed, that's something that it's hard to tell someone like, I don't believe anything that you just told me right now because you sound like you're just like reading off of something. Like, I'm sure you meant it, but it doesn't come across as genuine. And it's really hard to coach someone out of that, right? Because it's a thing that people do when they're nervous to kind of be safe behind that, And then what they'll say is, I'm sorry, I'm just so nervous. Like, so that's a common thing that is avoidable with, and having a recording of yourself answering these questions. It's always hard. I don't know, for me, it's hard to watch myself talk on video, but it can be helpful for new grads to see, like, am I coming across rehearsed? Like, how does it look when I like genuinely smile when I'm animated and telling a story? Other kind of don'ts, obvious things like swearing or,
oh my gosh,
being late, or, I mean, sometimes you'll hear, I'll work with new grads who say things where, it'll be like, how would your last manager describe you? And, oh, I was often late. Like, the things where you're like, come on, don't tell them that.
No, that seems pretty obvious that you wouldn't say that, but yeah, I could see some people
wear. I think it's good for people to kind of bring a little bit of themselves into what they wear. Like, if you want to go the super professional business sort of like, blazer and blouse kind of route, that's great. If you want to wear a dress, like whatever you look like professional but comfortable in, that maybe shows a little bit of your personality. Like, when I interviewed, I chose like a light blue gray suit with a white top. Like, I feel like the blue was a little bit bold, but it like matched my resume colors and like, I don't know.
Yeah. I like putting a little bit of your personality into it because a lot of people are just going to wear like the black blazer, black pants kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or skirt. Yeah. I wore a pink shirt under my blazer. So there was like a pop of color too. Yeah. I love that.
I did choose to go with flats instead of heels. Just because I don't know, I just felt like I would like move a little bit more comfortably that way. But honestly, it's just, whatever is going to make you feel comfortable and you're going to look like you feel like yourself,
Yeah. Don't wear heels if you're not used to wearing heels. I wore flats too because I knew they were giving me a tour of the hospital and I didn't want to be like cloaking and limping all over the hospital if I wasn't used to these shoes. So be comfortable but professional, I think, is really solid advice. So, Mary, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. I know you've already helped so many new grads, and I know you're going to continue to. So just keep on doing what you're doing and crushing it. It's just amazing what you're doing. I'm so impressed, and I just love it. If you want to see... Yeah, absolutely. If you want to see more from Mary, you can go to her YouTube channel. It's New Grad Nursing Interview Coach. And that's also your Instagram handle. And I'll put all of this in the description of the show, along with your email and your website if anybody wants to get in touch with you. Highly, highly recommend. So, Mary, thanks again so much.
Right. Thank you for meeting with me, Lauren.
Absolutely. Have an awesome afternoon. I'll talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
Mary, thank you so much for joining us today. And for all of you out there who have an interview coming up for your first nursing job, please go to Mary's YouTube channel, New Grad Nursing Interview Coach, or you can go to her website, newgradnursinginterviewcoach.com, and she offers one-on-one private coaching. That would be an amazing, incredible way to prepare for an upcoming interview. But you can also listen to every video that she has on YouTube and learn from the other mock interviews that she has on there. She's an incredible resource for you guys, and I hope that you take full advantage. So Until next time, guys, this is Nurse Lauren. It is my personal mission to help put more great nurses into the world. Thank you all so much for your support in helping me to do that. And have an amazing day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nursing Student Coach Podcast.